Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the November 8th, 2023 meeting of the Smithfield Town Council to order. At this time, we have some special guests here from Troop 36, Cub Scouts, and I would like to ask them if they would rise, as well as everyone, and they could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you all very much. These young folks are here today to, as I understand, to fulfill a requirement for merit badge or program or something, sir?
Sir, it's their arrow light. One of the requirements is to attend the town meeting to see how the government works.
Well, we'll just love to have them here tonight, and always good to see them, and thank you for what you do with them as well. So, one item that's not on the agenda that I would like to handle at this time. I'd like to read this into the record. I also want this the document filed in the minutes. It says, "To whom it may concern, effectively today, November 7th, 2023, I hereby resign as a council member from the Smithfield Town Council." That's signed by A.W. Hall. This document was received by Mr. Stallings shortly after 4 yesterday afternoon. So, Madam Clerk, if you would file that with the minutes for the record. We also have a couple things. First, I'd like to congratulate Ms. Roundtree on her election to the Board of Supervisors yesterday. Congratulations, Renee. We also have in the audience our Circuit Court Clerk-elect, Laura Smith. Laura, would you stand up, please, for us? Congratulations. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is the informational section, monthly activity reports and committee summary reports, as well as upcoming meetings and activities. Mr. Stallings, any comment on them?
No, sir. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, the report's in your packet.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the town manager? Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. The next item is public comments. These are this is the opportunity for citizens to speak on matters that are not on the agenda for public hearing this evening. And the first individual that we have is a briefing by Isle of Wight Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Dick Grice, District 1. Mr. Grice, good to have you with us this evening.
Good evening, sir.
Evening.
I normally write out all my comments, but this evening, while on a telephone conversation, I pushed the wrong button, and I deleted them all. So I have to go by my handwritten notes. So you'll have to forgive me. Normally it takes me about 4 minutes to go through all the occasions. I should be able to read my own notes and get through with this in the next hour.
We'll move you to the bottom of the agenda list. Let's see what's next on the agenda. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed your last meeting. Mr. Robinson, I'm sure, came in my stead and did an outstanding job.
He did. Yes, sir. Thank you.
And so you had the report. I'll come back to that in just a moment, continuing to give reports. We did not have a work session at the first week of last month. That we decided that it was going to be more important to have a joint session with the town council, and I'll go over a couple of the issues that were addressed at that joint session. At our October the 19th meeting, we had a public hearing on an easement for a pump station, which was passed. We continue to work on the bylaws for the Commission on Adults with Disabilities. That's an organization that was put together as a task force and is now rolling out into a commission for the county. And we're hopefully going to make sure that that's very, very successful. It's truly a need in our community. It's an underserved population. The county got another award for its budgeting this year. This is the sixth consecutive year that they've received this award. It's really interesting. 8 years ago, a lot of it was on Excel spreadsheets, and today it's a fantastic way to do budgeting. What used to take days going through, now takes hours to review by a board member. Back on the joint meeting, we discussed a water agreement with the town. That's in its final stages of being drafted currently. I believe you have that on your agenda for this evening. We're prepared to take action on it next week, depending on the outcome of what happens here this evening. We are continuing to work on with the town on drafting the agreement on building code enforcement, and it is being worked on currently. I believe we'll have a draft by the end of next week, and Mr. Stiles will have a chance to read it and then bring it to your board.
We certainly
council.
thank you for that, yeah.
All right. We had an item on our agenda, which was our legislative priority list. And again, this year, we had a referendum for sales tax. Let me explain that particular one. Right now, if we move forward as a county and decide we're going to replace the West Side School, it's going to probably cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $70 million. We've got to get that money somewhere. We've got to pay principal, and we've got to pay interest when we float a bond. So we have sources of revenue, and our main source of revenue in the county is real estate tax rates. That's it. That's where we get most of our money, that and fees. So as a consequence, we are looking for alternatives. Why have the property owners have to carry all of the burden? They don't have all of the children. Plus, there are ways that 9 other communities are now funding their school facilities. And that is, they have passed by referendum a 1% sales tax, and that was passed by their constituents. In other words, they decided how they were going to pay for schools, not the government. And in so doing, those 9 are now building schools and financing it through those taxes. The tax also is unusual in the fact that, A, it is not on food, nor is it on personal hygiene items, nor can it be used for any other purpose. It is restricted to school facility use improvements only, period. And it expires in 20 years. So after 20 years, you got to renew it. And it has to be renewed by referendum and the vote of the constituents living here in residence here in the county. So we are advocates of it. We've been trying to get this passed for all counties. Of course, we're a little biased in having it done for ourselves, but it's very important that we get this through. The changes in the House and in the Senate, it's going to be unusual. We're going to have to figure out that when they get back in session, who does what and who does when. But we're going to continue to pursue this, and I'm going to do it even as a private citizen. I really feel strongly about that. We ought to have the choice of how we pay for our schools. So I'm an advocate for that. That is our #1 priority on our list of legislative suggestions prior to the session going in this year. And that actually is the last item on my agenda this evening, except for the one following comment. This will be the second to my last opportunity to address you. I even wore my official shirt tonight so that you could see that I was on the Board of Supervisors. It still fits, by the way, after 8 years. The other thing is that starting in January, after my next presentation, the person giving this report hopefully will be a lot better looking than I am.
I won't touch that one with a 10-foot pole, sir, but understood.
All right. Are there any questions or comments or snide remarks or anything else?
Any questions from Mr. Grice? We'll wait for the last minute to provide those.
Oh, Okay.
So, yeah, but no, any questions? Dick, thanks so much. We really appreciate y'all engaging in the intergovernmental meeting with us. I think some good things are going to come from that, and we really appreciate the cooperation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
On the sign-up sheet for public comment, I have first Mr. Bill Harris. Mr. Harris? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Bill Harris, and almost what Dick just did. There it is. I live at 329 Gray Street. Start by saying we hope that some of you had an opportunity to visit Gray Street Halloween night and to enjoy the decorations and the hospitality and the fun and the energy that well over 820 costumed children, along with uncounted parents and other visitors, brought to the festivities on the street that night. A special thanks to Chief Howell and the police department for doing an exceptional job of blocking off the street and keeping the roadway safe for everybody. I appreciate that one really well. As most of you know, my wife and I have attended virtually every planning commission meeting, every TC meeting, every town council meeting we could possibly get to over the last couple years. Most of those have been very interesting, at least, and usually quite informative. Often they've been a little exasperating. But tonight I want to offer an observation regarding the meeting last month that brought the County Board of Supervisors together with the members of the Town Council. It was a really interesting meeting, and the give and take between both groups was very informative and I think very educational. Based on the dialogue and the sharing of ideas, as well as the stated desire by both BOS and the TC to do a better job of facing common problems together, I would hope that the two groups would meet far more regularly so that the issues that face both the town and the county can be addressed by the governing bodies of each at the same time and in the same manner. I believe that the suggestion that a couple members of the BOS meet with a couple members of the town council on occasion to be an inadequate solution. There's much on the horizon that will impact all of us. Applications for residential and commercial development, increased traffic congestion, the ability to fund public school system that Dick just mentioned, emergency services are but a few, and a coordinated plan developed by the BOS and TC in concert will help us to deal with those issues much more efficiently than if there are two separate plans in place at the same time. I think it is clear to anyone who has been paying any attention at all that if we do not put a master plan in effect sooner than later and get ahead of what's coming in terms of development and traffic, we will lose control over what happens in both our historic Riverside town and in the county as well. Of major interest at another meeting was the discussion of how to address BHAR's recommendation that the application by Smithfield Foods to demolish and remove the old red barn in the parking lot behind Smithfield Inn be denied. I know tonight that that is an action issue for town council, but I just wanted to ask if town council had reached out to Smithfield Foods to see if they would be willing to move it to a town property so we could protect what is truly a significantly historic building. It would be great if the town and Smithfield Foods could work out something. There's plenty of room at Windsor Castle property, or maybe it could become part of whatever eventually goes on to the Pierceville property. For a town that brags on its history, it seems to me and Mary that we need to do a better job of protecting our historic landmarks. And I do have one other comment about one other meeting. Our town attorney, Mr. Riddick, was unable to attend last month's meeting, and I feel like I really missed an opportunity that night. When I realized that Bill was not present, I tried to get a note to the mayor asking him if I could be the guy that said 1 minute in Bill's absence, but the public period was way too short. Maybe next time.
1 minute.
As we all know now, there are a number of very troubling issues that the town council must address in the very near future so it can move on to doing the town's business. It is my hope that transparency, integrity, and honesty and fairness will be the hallmarks of important deliberation and decisions. And I hope also that in this important month of November, all of us will remember there is a great deal to be thankful for living here in Smithfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Bob Hines.
Good evening, Bob. Bob Hines, 260, I almost started to say where I used to work. 216 Washington Street, Smithfield. I was at the last planning commission meeting, and I was really a little bit surprised at some of what I heard. They had a discussion item, and it was talking about the project that the county's gonna have up near the high school. And there were items of concern. Density of population, density of traffic, potential another stoplight, lot size, all of these things. These are things that, I guess not in our backyard, people have talked about with Pierceville and largely ignored. And yet now Planning Commission is concerned about that out there. And it's like, so what in the historic district? Let's just do it. Another concern I have is if, depending on your point of view, if we get the wrong people on council replacing the two that are leaving, could we have a World Trade Center on Pierceville? Or depends on, like I say, depends on your point of view as to what you think's going to be allowed, what you think should be good. But it really boggles my mind that the Planning Commission is all concerned about out there, but right next to the historic districts, like, let's just do it, folks. One other thing I will ask is when y'all are having your time of speaking, please speak into your microphones so that we out here can hear you for those of us that might be a little bit hearing challenged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. That's all I have signed up. Did anyone come in late that wished to be heard by town council on the public comments?
I did put my name down on the one about the red barn.
Ma'am?
I did put my name down on the one about the red barn.
Sure.
That'll come up with public
That'll come,
hearing.
yeah, that'll be in the public hearing. Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Anyone, council comments? Any comments by members of council prior to proceeding with the rest of the agenda? Seeing none, we shall move to the consent agenda items. Item C1, Ms. Roundtree.
We have a resolution for a street closure request for the Mistletoe Market on Saturday, November 18th. That request is for noon to 10 p.m. Recommend approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Item C2, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion to adopt the water agreement between the town of Smithfield and Holloway County. I had talked to Michael this afternoon about this, and my concerns were the county taking certain parcels of lands that were in the town of Smithfield and servicing those, and I felt strongly that the town needs to service their own customers. But after talking with him, I wanted to let you know that this would push our limit for our capacity for water, and we would not be able to continue to do that. So what we already have on the books and down the road has already been calculated. So if we did these parcels, we would not be able to meet the capacity that we're withdrawing right now. So I felt a little better about that, but I still have a little bit of heartburn about the town not being able to service their own customers. But as you see that the county is working with us, and we're working with them for the first time in a long time, we seem to be on the same page together. So at this time, I'd like to recommend that motion be accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Item C3, deed of bargain sale, proposed lift station site, public buildings and welfare. Vice Mayor Butler.
Yes, the deed of bargain and sale proposed lift station site. This is actually the lift station site that is located in the Gatlin Point community. The property is still deeded to the town of Smithfield, and we're looking to do a transfer or deed of bargain and sale to Alawite County.
Thank you, ma'am. Item C4, invoices over $20,000 requiring council authorization. Mr. Pack, will you take that for us, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. This evening, we have 4 invoices that are in excess of $20,000. The first is to Lewis Construction of Virginia, $58,852. This is for work on the water main on Sykes Court. The second to is Atlantic Communications. These last 3 have been received since our Finance Committee. Atlantic Communications, $25,536.38. And that's for equipment for our police department. SHI International, $23,210.73. These are our friends over at Microsoft for some of the licensing we use for our computers here. And then finally to Blair Brothers, $44,972. Several projects that have to do with groundskeeping and washout abatement at Looter Sports. We do recommend these invoices are approved for payment this evening.
Thank you, sir. Any members of council have any questions or concerns pertaining to the consent agenda items? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Pack to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Call the question, please, ma'am.
Mrs. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Mayor Bowman?
Yes. Moving on now to the action section. The first item, public hearing, appeal of decision to deny demolition of an accessory structure on a contributing parcel. Ms. Clary, give us some background on this.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The applicant is appealing the Board of Historic and Architecture Review's decision to deny the application for the demolition of the Red Barn located at 111 North Church Street. The property is classified as a contributing property in the Historic District. According to our zoning ordinance, properties designated as properties which contribute to the historic character of the town but which do not contain a landmark structure shall be known as contributing properties for the purpose of this ordinance. At the Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 meeting, the BHAR denied the application for the demolition of the Red Barn accessory structure located at 111 North Church Street, as they believe the structure should be repaired and/or replaced. The BHAR stated this was one of the last remaining peanut barns in the area and viewed it as contributing to the historic district. Therefore, the applicant did file an appeals application appealing the BHAR's decision, and this application is then forwarded to Town Council for their review and decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Clary? Thank you, ma'am. Is the appellant present or represented? Ms. McClure? Good evening. Can you state your name and who you represent, please, for the record?
Absolutely. My name is Amy McClure, and I represent Smithfield Foods.
Proceed, please.
Thank you. We are, Ms. Clary's recitation was exactly right. We are appealing the BHAR determination that we cannot tear down what we refer to as a shed. It's our position that while the property itself, the lot in the town of Smithfield is considered a contributing lot, the structure itself is not. It is deteriorated to a point where it no longer has any historical value. It's not contributing to the historic nature of the district, which is a very charming district, but this shed is just not contributing to that. One of the reasons it's not contributing is that it's actually not even visible from the street, which is evidenced by the public hearing sign was, when that was put up to alert the public to the fact that this was happening. They did not even put the sign next to the shed. They had to put it out at the street so that people could see it. Which again evidences that you cannot even see it. It's not contributing to the historical nature of the area. Also, there is no real evidence that the board gave to me that this is a structure that was used to store peanuts or what any use of it was. The nails in the barn, / shed, some people call it a barn, are modern nails that could have been produced in the last couple of decades. There's nothing really particularly unique to the structure and how it was built. So according to the guidelines of the BHAR, it really just does not qualify as a contributing structure. And I have time for questions if anybody has.
Sure. Absolutely. I may have a couple, but
I apologize. I forgot to mention that because the structure is so deteriorated, it is a significant safety hazard. One side of the shed is covered in vegetation. There are things that are being stored in there currently, and we can't even get in there to take them out because if someone were to go in there, it would likely collapse. And we have evidence of people who have tried to go in there. I believe one person said that their grandson had broken into it. So at this point, it's a safety hazard. It's a dilapidated building, and it violates the ordinance of the city for it to be in existence.
okay. Anybody have questions for Ms. McClure at the present time? We may have further based on what goes on in the public hearing, and
Sure.
we will also give you some time to rebut after the public hearing as well. Questions, Ms. McClure? Mr. Pack?
Just one. There was some conversation earlier about the potential to potentially relocate the shed, perhaps with a partnership with somebody that has property, whether it be town or other. Is that something that you guys would consider?
At this point, we would not consider that. We've had contractors look at it, and we don't believe it would be safe to make any attempt to move the structure.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say you didn't believe it'd be safe to remove the structure and move it or whatever?
That's correct. Any sort of sudden movements could.
Okay. Further questions?
I do have a
Ms.
question.
Butler.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I have
please.
a question of Tammy. We say it's a contributing property as well as a landmark structure. It's not a landmark. Well, I want some clarification to that. Did she say it was not?
No, she said it's not.
Oh, it's not?
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
So the definition of a contributing property that we have in the zoning ordinance, it does not have a landmark structure on it,
Okay.
but it is known because it contributes to the historic character of the property. This property is contributing. We believe it was identified as being a contributing property because it had the red barn located on it.
Do we know the age when it was constructed?
We do not,
I know Jennifer England works at the museum. Have we had a conversation with her to determine the historic value of it?
we have not.
Okay.
Further questions? I have one. I looked at the survey, but I want to hear it from you as the expert. The entrance where you come in to this area, is any of that public right-of-way, or is that private property? Or either you can answer or Ms. McClure can answer. I know there are different parcels that are there, some owned obviously by Smithfield Foods, some owned by the inn, but in other words, could somebody, if they wanted to, declare this, and Mr. Riddick, maybe you can help me as well. So, could somebody basically, if they decided collectively that they wanted to close off access to this area so that no one could come in, is the entire area private property, or is there any public right-of-way access to get to the building?
The right-of-way would be off of North Church Street,
Yep.
but this structure is located all the way back at the
I'm familiar. I
back
visited
edge
it.
of the
Yeah.
property.
To answer your question, there's no public right-of-way from the intersection with North Church Street back onto the Smithfield Foods property.
So to clarify, when we're talking about a contributing structure that someone could see, someone has the opportunity to go and look at, somebody could visit and take in the aura of the historical value of this, is it possible that the landowners decided we don't want anybody back there, they could collectively shut off that area and nobody could ever get back there?
That is correct.
Any further questions?
Mayor Bergman, I
Yes, Ms. Roundtree.
can't recall have we ever considered the structure as blighted?
We had a discussion, I think, about blighted structures before, and I don't know where we are. Mr. Riddick, can you answer that question?
I don't think anybody's ever been identified by staff or anyone else as blighted. Although this structure's been discussed for 7 years, it's something like that. It's been going on a long time. Smithfield Foods wanted to remove it many years ago, and then there was a discussion about potentially either reconstructing something or fixing it up, but this was many years ago, and then the issue just dropped, and now they raised the issue again. But the issue of removal was raised many years ago, so it's not a new issue.
It was resurrected. We received a complaint about the vegetation on the structure. When we reached out to Smithfield Foods to correct the excessive vegetation, that's what triggered the investigation into this red barn and the decision that they wanted to demolish it as opposed to repairing it.
And for the record, when I visited this place, as soon as this came to light, the neighbor that's behind it, directly behind it, was concerned, and I believe it lodged some concerns with the town about the tin on the roof flapping that then caused the dog to bark, that then caused other things. And I went and I went and looked at the barn, and I've seen these type of barns around. I know that we've got someone from Bihar, I think, here that maybe can help us as to how a determination was made that this is one of the last remaining peanut barns around here, when I think in the countryside, and you should know as well as anyone, From a farming perspective, I'd like to know where that determination came from. But what does cause me really some issues, number one, I know the condition of it. And number two, no one could get, if I dare say, unless this issue had come to the forefront, if you'd asked somebody where the Red Peanut Barn is in Smithfield, I don't know how many people could tell you exactly where the Red Peanut Barn was in Smithfield until this came up. But anyway, I'll hear from the rest of it. Tammy, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, sir.
Ms.
Thank you.
McClure, I'm sorry. Ms. McClure, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or?
Just since you brought it up, there is a criteria in the guidelines that BHAR is supposed to follow for the demolition of a structure. And one of those things is that if there were any historically significant events that occurred inside of the building. While there isn't any evidence before us right now that there were actually peanuts stored in that barn, I don't know that storing peanuts is a historically significant event such as the signing of the Declaration of Independence or something like that. So just
Well, in Smithfield, it might be a little bit more historically significant because we were peanuts before we were ham. So anyway, but we'll
I
see.
appreciate that.
But thank you. We'll hear from you if you'd like to rebut. Any further questions?
I wondered also, Mayor Bowman, if
Ms. Roundtree?
the police chief had any introspection on
We need
this.
to have a public hearing first, and then,
Oh.
we need
Yeah.
to do that, and then.
Then we can follow up. That's fine. It's not a problem. Okay. The first person I have is Julie Hess. Ms. Hess? Can you state your name and address, please?
Yes, sir. Good evening, council members. My name is Julie Hess. I live at 223 South Church Street, and I am a new member to BHAR, so a lot of this is, I'm learning. I'm in the wheelhouse. But I'm asking you to vote no, or at least table the decision this evening until we've exhausted all possible, sorry, I'm nervous, all possible other ways to preserve this building. The barn is a contributing historical structure within the Smithfield Historic District dating back to 1880 and is cataloged in the Department of Historic Resources, ID number 300-0087-0046. The information can be found on their website, and it was surveyed February 21st in 1990. And I want to stress the importance to you all, being our town council, that Smithfield is designated as a certified local government, which according to their website says the goal of a certified local government program is to facilitate state and local government cooperation with federal partners to promote nationwide preservation initiatives. Through the certification process, local communities make a commitment to national historic preservation standards. This commitment is key to America's ability to preserve, protect, and increase awareness of our unique cultural heritage found across the country. And then Smithfield is also designated as a Preserve America community in March of 2004. For just a moment, I'll go back to Pierceville. What if we picture it in all of its glory and heyday with the outbuildings? Wouldn't that, in conjunction with the Schoolhouse Museum, have served as a wonderful entrance corridor to historic Smithfield and made some type of event venue space or welcome center? You know, you could have charged a fee for people to come visit to help offset the cost to rehab Pierceville. There are tax incentives for income-generating buildings for federal historic preservation. I'm so sorry. I hate being nervous.
It's okay. Take your time.
I'm passionate. If you don't believe that tourists visiting our town would have not wanted to walk through the Pierceville farmhouse from the 1700s to see what it looked like, you're wrong. Christmas in Smithfield this year has brought back the home tours of 3 historic homes and has already sold enough tickets in advance to ensure that the event is a success for the season. But let's get back to the barn. Just 2 weeks ago, Jennifer England on the Hampton Roadshow during Smithfield Week brought in her 3D model of a peanut and told everyone that Smithfield is the peanut capital of the world, was the peanut capital of the world. What an educational tool to be able to see a barn like that within 50 yards of the museum if the current owner, who was a Fortune 5K company, wanted to rehab it and make it an educational walkthrough. Got Boy Scouts here, they might like to go see it and learn about the peanut industry that was here. Some tours, I know we have Windsor Castle where they have restored the barns beautifully, but it would be nice to be able to just go see it right in town. So Again, I ask that you vote no this evening, or at least table it until we try to figure out a different way to preserve it, whether it be move it, take down the barn in pieces. It doesn't have to be moved as an entire structure. You can take it down. Yes, I know it's a lot of work, but things take work. The bottom line is not the end-all, be-all, and I just hope that you all consider saying no. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Torrey.
This is a very dinky little,
Ma'am?
I said, this is a very dinky little, used to have a nice big one, as I recall. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about all this. This is just a little bit of the information on historic preservation that I have been obsessed with for about a decade since moving to Smithfield. I want to thank Ms. Hess for your hard work and the things that you've said. There are many among us who fought long and hard and also were accused of being too passionate and long-winded, but I really appreciate what you said. There was a historic preservation specialist in the town who passed some years back. His name was Gary Ramsberg. He too confirmed that that barn was no newer than about 1900. It is a peanut barn. I would say that who could afford to restore it better as a token of good faith to the town than Smithfield Foods? I find it really hard to hear an expression that there's not funds for it being said. Of course, there would be, and it would be greatly appreciated. You can see it from the street. It is not a shed. A shed is a very small, insignificant design. I also want to talk about the ordinances in general, the historic preservation ordinances. We are celebrating, those of us who are obsessed with historic preservation in the town, 50 years, half a century of preservation being taken really seriously in our town. In 1973, we entered the National Register and became the Smithfield National Register Historic District. John I. Kofer, these are names that people probably haven't heard in maybe decades, but they fought long and hard, people that were on town council. Colonel Elsie Harris was the town planning manager. Charles S. Betts, known as Charlie Betts, his family owned Windsor Castle for over 100 years. Florine Moore, our first and only lady mayor. Thankfully, the people I'm talking about, she's the only one still living, thank goodness. She also fought for the preservation ordinances to go through. It took years for them to get passed, and Mr. Kofer and Colonel Elsie Harris fought long and hard to convince people on the town council that it is important to preserve our past. We are a Dillon's Rule state. That actually works beautifully for historic preservation in our town, in our county. Dillon's Rule has the last say in effect. We can't break what the Virginia rules of preservation are, and they're amazing. Our ordinances are enabled by and follow Virginia law. Bihar is lawful and empowered. Town council is only to override what Bihar has said if Bihar is violating their own ordinances. Judge Godwin, in 1983 and 1985, presided over Harris v. Parker, Isle of Wight Chancery number 3079.
1 minute.
He said, our ordinances are legal, constitutional, enforceable, and he step-by-step defined what was wrong with the Parker House and what had to be fixed. Precedent was set. Those precedents have been admired and followed by many towns in Virginia and also elsewhere. There was no evidentiary hearing, no finding of fact, no ruling of law that has overturned Parker v. Harris. The judge in 2019 concerning Pierceville did not take away the governing power of Bihar. A town does not have to have ordinances, but if they do have historic preservation ordinances, they must have an architectural review board. And we do.
Your time has expired.
What they say is supposed to go. And that old yucky-looking barn can be restored. Look at what they do in Charleston. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Teresa Mulherin?
Teresa Mulhern, 206 Washington Street. 17 years I've been going to Bihar. I know some of you have as well, and I heard every argument for this barn because I live by Norma Leonard. And those of you who remember Norma Leonard, she was a fanatical Bihar member. Smithfield Foods said they would restore the barn all those years ago. They brought the plans in, they were approved, it never happened. So we're following the playbook now of what we did at Pierceville. Let it dilapidate, let it dilapidate. All right, go ahead, tear it down. So I'm going to ask you this question. If there's a house in Smithfield that's dilapidated like that, the walls are falling down, it's being held up by timbers and ship masts, would you vote to tear it down? Here's the trick to that question. You just tore down Mount Vernon. So yes, it can be restored. All of us who are fans of this old house know what miracles can be done. It's a historic barn. Find something to do with it. After all these years of going to Bihar, in the beginning, they were really strict. They barely approved anything. You really had to work to get approved. It's not the same anymore. They actually did not approve this. Please uphold their decision on that. I know that took a lot of work for that committee to say that. And thank you, Ms. Hess. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Bob Hines?
This thing's a little short tonight. Bob Hines, 216 Washington. People that are familiar with St. Luke's, that was a pile of bricks waiting to happen. If you looked at any of the pictures from the past, it was just trashed inside. It was about ready to fall over. Various people put up a lot of money, visionaries. Look what it is today. It's a jewel. It's a destination. Pierceville, it predates this barn. Now, I'm not speaking for or against this structure, but I'm just feel compelled to make some observations here. Pierceville predates that a lot. It's not a whole lot younger than St. Luke's. The Womble House, I think it was like 1820s or so. It had to go. A lot of towns, if they have, say, blighted downtown area or something, if the town owns it, they'll offer it to people, or like a HUD house. You buy it, you gotta fix it, you gotta live there a certain amount of time. But no, the Womble House could only be moved because there's other plans. If it put a cheap price on it, some of these people that are come here that buy these places and restore them and keep them up and really contribute, somebody would have bought that place and restored it back to its glory. Pierceville was about to fall down. There's a lot of places around this country that were about to fall down. And they say this place is contributing. Pierceville was designated as a landmark. Well, very quickly, it became a pile of bricks. And now, I don't know, I haven't even heard any talk about a historical marker there, which there should be. Those two houses were tied to important people in the community. This building is not. So by comparison, you know, so the point I'm making is, whether you decide to do it or not. Well, we had John Corstein in, talked about the Pierceville house, talked about something being rare. Pierceville house didn't hold any appeal for me appearance-wise, even if it was restored to brand new looking. It didn't excite me as far as a structure. But John Corstein, which I'm sure you all know, has met with us and said that it was one of a few remaining houses of its type, of its era. Still, it had to go for whatever's agenda. So my point is, if this thing is required to stay, I see a lot of rank hypocrisy as far as what's been done with other buildings. Maybe it should stay. Those other ones certainly should have too. Again, I say, St. Luke's was about to be a pile of bricks, and look at it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Lee Abbott Lehman. Good evening, ma'am.
Lee Abbott Lehman, 111 Thomas Street. I believe, I don't know if anybody's signed up after me, but I'm one of the only residents that actually abuts the property. We received the certified letter about this appeal taking place. We were not the ones that complained about the roof and the structure. I don't know if Ms. Adams did next door, but I would say we 100% agree. For as much as I love the historic structures downtown, it is what drove us to choose to live where we do. Please, any of you, and I ask anybody in the audience, come and sit in our backyard, our patio, because if the traffic on Thomas Street doesn't get to you, sitting in our patio and watching this barn, which has over the years become more and more in a state of disrepair, that's a problem. I don't think we're comparing apples to apples if we're talking about some of the other structures that have been talked about tonight, because those were homes on whole freestanding properties where if you had it as a designated structure for tourism or for people to visit, like the schoolhouse, there would have been space for people to come in and out. This is a structure that is on a private property. It's on Smithfield Foods parking lot. And if they choose to take it down, or if approved, or they choose to renovate it, they don't have to allow the parking that they do back there. And that parking is relied upon. I know from the time that I spent working at the inn, we forbid any employee to go in there. Carolyn Burke was very strict. When she took over the property from Foods, we did go in there to check because there was some things that were stored in there from when Foods owned the inn. And it took opening the doors and one person stepping in there and it sounding like creaky, like something out of a Scooby-Doo movie. We had to pull the employees out. No employee was allowed to go back in. So that was 6 years ago. This building has been in disrepair, and when Food says it's a hazard, it absolutely is a hazard. I think the dead vegetation is probably the only thing holding it together. The roof is a very large concern to us. Whenever there is a storm, whenever there is high wind, we don't know what parts of this building are going to come flying off and right into our backyard or Ms. Adams' backyard next door, or if the wind is going the other way towards the winery. If the building, I don't see logistically how it could be moved in whole, even if it could sustain that move if braced, because of the two egress points, because the dimensions of the building and the dimensions of the exits onto Church Street with any turn they would have to make with the structure, as well as the exit out onto Church Street between the inn and Maggie Casey's, are just simply not wide enough for that type of maneuver. Eric and I would very much like to see Foods dismantle it, preserve the material, and see it move to another site in town where there is an ample opportunity for it to be restored either at Foods costs or public fundraising, and I don't mean publicly, just totally publicly funded, I mean donations like happened with Mount Vernon, like happened with St. Luke's to an extent. So it's somewhere where people can enjoy it, because restoring something for a walk-through monument that's in a private business parking lot with employees coming and going, or people coming and going to a wedding or to the coffee house, isn't necessarily really going to help our tourism. I think I have a minute left. I haven't gotten the warning yet. This is a bit off topic, but while we're on the topic of red things, next Thursday is the American Red Cross, the Smithfield Community Blood Drive, and I've been remiss actually commenting on that at any of the town council meetings. Through no fault of their own, whether it be Trinity or American Red Cross, we've had the last two drives that have had to be either suspended during the drive.
1 minute.
Thank you. Or not held at all. So there is there's always a critical shortage, and we would love to see Smithfield end strong. So any of those great cops that are in shape, let's get them over there, the firefighters. But we could absolutely use donations. Every donation helps 3 patients. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all I have signed up for the public hearing for this matter. Ms. McClure, you've got, how about 3 minutes to rebut if you'd like.
Thank you. I'll try to speak quickly. There was definitely a lot of talk about Pierceville. Had a long conversation with Trey Gwaltney a couple weeks ago, where he informed me of that entire situation. We talked about an hour in the parking lot, and that was a shame that that had to come down. And I will say that this storage shed is not Pierceville. That was a really unfortunate situation, and I'll circle back to that in a minute. I'm glad that Ms. Hess brought up the Boy Scouts. I'm so glad they're here. I was a former board member of the Tidewater Council and support the Boy Scouts very much. In fact, I attended the Darden here gala this weekend, which I've attended, I think, every year for the last 12 years, except for the years I had babies, when I had to stay home and take care of them. And one of the speakers there, who speaks every year, a good friend of mine, brought up the fact that Boy Scouts is about a lot of things, but the number one thing that Boy Scouts is about is keeping the boys safe, and the girls safe now, because girls can be Eagle Scouts now, which is great. But I just want to reiterate that while we're on the topic, is that safety is our number one concern here. This town council's big priority is definitely to preserve the city, but it's also to preserve the people who are in it. And again, the Boy Scouts, we want to keep our kids safe, and we know that it is not a safe structure, and just its existence in the town is not a good look for safety precautions. Getting back to the Pierceville issue, it's my understanding, and again, I haven't heard of the Dillon rule since I took the Virginia bar exam, so I was glad to hear about that again. But just getting into the legal aspects of this, there are, as far as I know, and my understanding of the law here, there is no way that the town can force a property owner, whether that is a retired woman living in a house or a corporation that owns a piece of property, it does not matter.
1 minute.
Thank you. You cannot compel us or force us to maintain a structure. And while we wish that the structure was not in the condition that it is, the fact remains that it is an unsafe structure in your town that presents a safety hazard to your children. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm closing the public hearing at this time, and the matter is now before the council for discussion and action.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Michael and I had a brief interaction earlier today. I kind of dragged my feet on this, but I asked him to look into what is a certified local government, of which Smithfield is. And I hate to put him on the spot, but were you able to find any information on that as it would pertain to this matter?
Right. A certified local government through the Department of Historic Resources means that we have met certain criteria to be designated that way. And the town of Smithfield is in 2020 or 2004, we just talked about, we're still current. What it requires is that you have a local historic preservation ordinance, we do. That you have a local review board, which we do. So we meet those requirements. Maintenance of systems for the surveying of historic properties, we do that. Adequate public participation. And so we have all those things. There's nothing in any of this that says you can't tear down buildings, but you have to follow the processes that you have in place. And so all of our historic preservation overlay, the BHAR, all of those things is what gives us the ability to be that certified local government. So our certification is still current, and those things being in place is what allowed us to apply for that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions?
I wondered
Comments?
if the
Ms. Roundtree?
documentation that Ms. Hess spoke of could be entered in the public record.
I was going to ask, we need to do that anyway, because what we do here is subject to appeal. And Ms. Hess, that document you have, can you give it to Ms. King if you would, please? We'll enter that into the record. I'd like Mr. Riddick to look at it for me as well, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Are you finished, Ms. Roundtree?
Also, I think my earlier question was about to be to the chief of police about safety and complaints and concerns. I mean, often when we're talking about blighted properties, which is certainly in my, book qualifies,
The chief's getting up to answer your
Yeah.
question.
To my knowledge, excuse me, to my knowledge, we have not received any complaints concerning that building, of any kids, trespassing or anything of that nature.
and are there cameras or any kind of security systems back there, do you know?
If there are cameras there, it would be on the private businesses. And I'm not sure if Smithfield Inn has cameras for that location or not.
Okay, that's all, thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
In the spirit of cooperating with Smithfield Foods and the town and BR, I feel like since you've been kicking this can down the road for 7 years, that we could ask for 60 to 90 days to work out something with Smithfield Foods about having some professional people take this barn down, relocate it at wherever it might go. That would relieve the safety issues that you're worried about. If somebody thinking about, I wouldn't expect the Boy Scouts to do that. That would be ridiculous to think that was gonna happen, but they're all professional people that are very interested in the wood, even if they don't put the thing back together again. They're still use it for something else. So it can be used in some form or fashion, and it probably can be relocated. So I'd like to see us table this and give them an opportunity to work with BR a little closer to find out these legal ramifications that was brought up by Ms. Hess. And with the intent that sooner or later, yes, it's probably gonna come down, but let's work together in the spirit of cooperation instead of just tearing it down and being done with it. So it would save you the demolition cost, and it's a win-win situation for the town and Smithfield Foods.
So as I'm clear, what you would do is allow whatever the council decided, 60 days or 90 days for an independent entity, if they wanted to, and I don't know the liability, I mean, as far as Smithfield allowing the demolition of it, and then Smithfield being liable, I worry about that small part of the mechanism, but I think what your premise is that we allow 60 to 90 days, and then if not, we come back and take action. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Riddick, do you have a comment?
Yeah, you don't have the authority to do that. You can choose to not take action tonight and continue this to the next meeting for the purpose of engaging in a discussion with Smithfield Foods to see if what Mr. Smith is suggesting can be worked out with them. But they have no obligation to do that. Mrs. McClure stated the law correctly. We have no ability to make them replace it, which was one of the recommendations from the BHAR. Unfortunately, nor do you have the ability to make them repair it. Ms. Torrey speaks about the Parker case, and a lot of people know about that. It's the old Parker House on Main Street. That was the landmark case, and Judge Godwin heard that case, and we used that. We beat people to death with that ruling for years and years and years, making them fix their house up. But Mrs. Crocker called our bluff, and we got sued over the whole thing. And we had a very good legal counsel from Richmond who advised us that the enabling legislation did not give us the authority to do that. We didn't do that. We have the ability to, under the historic preservation provisions of our ordinance, we have control over the way people restore their homes, add on to their homes, do all those things, but there's no mechanism to compel repair. That's why we've been having recent discussions about the building code issue, because there are teeth in the building code that we could use for maintenance purposes, but once again, as town managers explained, and we talked about at the intergovernmental meeting, we don't have a person on staff that can do that, and so we rely on the building official to do that, and they only act on a complaint basis. So we think we should be more proactive in that regard, but it requires working out something with the county and the building official. But Mr. Smith may have a great idea, but you can't just continue an appeal for 60 or 90 days. You have to, for the purpose of entering into an agreement with a private property owner on this issue. It's fine to table it for 30 days and enter into discussions with them and see if that's something they want to do, but then you have to make a decision. They're entitled to hear, you either sustain the action by the BHAR or you overrule them and make another decision, and then they have recourse to the circuit court if they don't like the decision you make. But I'm not saying what you're suggesting, Mr. Smith, is a bad idea. I'm just saying you don't have the ability to do that in a procedural stance.
Well, what I'm asking is in the spirit of cooperation, to move forward with working with them so that and I'm not asking them to fix the building up. I'm not doing that. I just said it was going to be taken down some form or fashion. So give us time, or give somebody some time to have the ability to come take it down and let them work with whoever it might be. That's what I'm asking. So if we need to take it back to BHAR and make a recommendation.
No, your action tonight, you don't have to make a decision tonight. You could continue this for 30 days, and that would give staff and whoever you want to be involved in this the opportunity to consult with Smithfield Foods to see if that is something that can be worked out at all. And then it could be reported back at the next council meeting, and if it is, then the issue will resolve itself. If it's not, you're back on, it's back on your plate for you to make a decision about the appeal.
Well, this gives us, the 30 days would give us the opportunity for the public and Smithfield Foods.
You can do that.
To see if they can work this out, and then if not, it'll come back to us, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You can do that. But my point was, and I'm not
Understand
picking
what
at
you're
your
saying.
60 or 90 days, I'm just
Right.
saying that's not something you have the authority to do at this point.
Mr. Pack, two things. One, we have tools in town where we rely on others to be subject matter experts. We looked at development a lot, and we rely on traffic experts because they know more about traffic. In this situation, we rely on BHAR. BHAR speaks and makes recommendations to council, and I trust the members of BHAR to be experts in their field. So I rely a lot on what they do, and I feel it's important that as a council, when they make recommendations to us, is we appoint the BHAR members, that we support them in their recommendations. Mr. Smith has a great suggestion. It's a win for both teams. It's a win for both sides. The only thing I might ask, Mike, that you tweak a little bit is a little greater direction, so that we have somebody on staff that works with Smithfield Foods to try and find a happy result. So that Smithfield Foods gets what they want, the building's gone, and we get what we want, some sort of preservation, whether it be simply reusing, repurposing the wood, or actually being able to put this up somewhere. But rather than just saying, I'd like to get a little more specific and saying, let's designate somebody to work closely, because it sounds like we can only do 30 days with that, or at least work on it in 30 days. We can talk about it again in 30 days, but we can only do it for 30 days. So time is of the essence. We have Thanksgiving in the middle of all this. I love your idea. I'm 100% support, but I want to be specific in what we say, and we're doing it, and doing so.
Well, that's going to be up to, go back to staff anyway. Tammy would have to work on that, so we could direct her to do that. So all I want to do is table it then for 30 days. Just do it in time.
I do have a question.
Ms. Butler?
The tabling the issue and what Randy just said, are we looking for a independent if Smithfield Foods agrees, we're looking for an independent third party to remove the barn? Okay. No?
I don't think so.
That's going to be between staff working with
Correct.
Smithfield Foods to come up with what they want to do about somebody taking it down or them taking it down, whatever the case may be.
Okay, but
So
Smithfield
the
Foods
third
would have
party
to agree to
comes in,
that.
It might come in whenever these negotiations take place. But that allows the town to work with them and them to work with us. Building's gone.
Okay,
Might
but
end
Smithfield
up-
Foods has to agree to that first,
That's correct.
because right now, they really want to tear the building
That's
down.
correct.
So we want to see if they will be agreeable to having somebody to come in to tear it down and relocate it somewhere else?
That's gonna be between staff and
Well-
Smithfield Foods.
Where do we want them to relocate it to? Staff will determine that. Do we want to keep it
could
here
go-
in
it
our
could go in-
community?
It could go in somebody's garage. It could go somewhere. I mean, so it's not.
But if I can, but Smithfield Foods going to have to agree to anything that we're talking about right now, correct?
Absolutely.
Well, the question I've got, in all due respect, Ms. McClure is here. Can we ask her if she can speak on behalf of Smithfield Foods and ask them if they're willing to entertain that? If they're not, we know that that's not going to work.
You're correct. That doesn't stop you from tabling it for 30 days.
No, it doesn't, but I'd like to hear, in all due respect, as a matter of full disclosure from Smithfield, are you in a position, I'm not going to put you in a position, but are you in a position to, you've heard what's been asked, to say if Smithfield Foods would be willing at this juncture to entertain that?
I've gone back and asked twice. I am given the authority to represent the company, and I don't believe that we would entertain that sort of negotiation. Of course, we're always happy to talk. We love the city. Our people live and work here. But to be honest, the safety concern is a huge concern for us. If we're going to table this for 30 days and delay the removal of the structure, we would maybe ask the city to indemnify us if anyone were to be hurt in the meantime. I don't know I don't think that's even possible, but
I don't think it is either.
I
Mr.
mean,
Riddick,
it is
no, not.
a huge problem.
No, we can't do that. We don't have the authority to indemnify you.
I don't think we do either.
I will say, Ms. McClure, and this may not change your mind, but I know a man who will probably take this down and indemnify you for that, because he's done it before. But that's just, he may not be willing to do it, but he's very well known in this area. He's done it many times. There is a person that would do that. Now, you may not find that acceptable, and that's well within your rights to do that, but there are people that will do that. Now, the idea of taking it apart, I mean, there's some question as to whether there's anything worth saving in there in the first place. But that's not really, none of these people at this table have the ability to make that decision, because they don't know.
I can tell you that there have been people who have asked us to preserve some of like the fixtures, like the locks and the things, and some of the wood on the door, and we're fully planning on doing that. Right now, we're already like talking about getting that done if and when we tear it down. So we're, for lack of a better word, we're cool with preserving some of the pieces. We just need the safety hazard removed from our property. It is a liability, it is dangerous. I didn't mean to insinuate any of these sweet Boy Scouts would go out and do that, but any child could go out and hurt themselves. Yeah. Or an adult.
All right, well, I think it's some good ideas. I'm not going to go down the path as far as some of my concerns, and I think a lot of that has to do with access. You start talking about Parker v. Harris, we're talking about, we got to make sure we keep apples and oranges separate on this one. Parker House is located right on Main Street, right on the corner, right in the middle of the downtown district or whatever. And again, if I hadn't been called, and I have been in Smithfield since '82 and worked as a police officer and supposed to know every nook and cranny of the town of Smithfield, if I hadn't been called over there, I would not have remembered that this specific peanut barn was there. And I'm concerned, again, as far as when we have ordinances, when you start using these as examples, then to me, it kind of dilutes the ones that we really need to preserve and really need to work with. Especially being on private property, totally, I mean, they put a gate up, they can do whatever they want to. And I've seen it, and I was there, to Ms. Lehman's point, when the wind blew and the dog barked, and it just, and I've looked at it. I've been there, looked at it. You can look at the pictures of it. There's not a single one of the boards now that actually reaches the ground. I also am a little concerned, if you look at the pictures that were provided, there is, and I don't know what significance this has or whatever, you've got the document now, Mr. Riddick, from 1880, but if you look at the front of it, it's painted, and then there's a broad area that's not painted. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what kind of sign went there, what was there, what was going on, or whatever. My wife and I contributed to the preservation of the courthouse, and I'm all for historic preservation, I really am. But when you start pushing it down to a certain level, I wonder if that's the right thing to do as far as making decisions. But I have no qualms whatsoever with us tabling it for 30 days, and maybe something can work out, and Mr. Riddick knows somebody that can take it apart, then it is a win-win situation. So I think the 30 days is a good idea. I just think, though, at the end of 30 days, though, this has been going on a while, and all involved deserve a decision. So with that, the floor is open. Mr. Smith.
I'd like to make a motion, we table this for 30 days and direct staff to work with Smithfield Foods as to the end result.
And they're given wide latitude to whatever they need to do, and if whatever they come back with, we'll consider it satisfactory.
Correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Pack. Further discussion? Mr. Brooks, yes, sir.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. We're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. We have the two adjoining neighbors that want it gone. They live right there. I've seen it. I know it quite well. I'm very passionate. I'd like to see it preserved. We have Bihar. We actually had Trey Gwaltney come in and talk about the preservation of it, or possible preservation of it. We have Bihar for a reason, so that they know their business. They bring it to us, just like we have a planning commission. They bring the stuff to us. And I totally agree with Mr. Smith. And I also agree with Randy in that let's not just say, oh, we're going to talk about it in 30 days. You know, what are the options? Is Windsor Castle Foundation, is that an option to even talk to? We need to have those kind of discussions. And if we find out that the only thing that can be done with it is to take it apart and give it to this guy that's going to use it to build boats or whatever, then so be it. But I did feel, because my neighbors are here, and it is part of the integral part of the historic district, that my voice be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comment?
Mayor Bowman, I
Yes,
wonder
Ms. Roundtree.
about the comment from Smithfield Foods about just the safety aspect and how they maybe could protect the property and citizens from harming themselves over the next 30 days, and if it might make sense to block off the area, place no trespassing signs, something like that, just to keep it safe while we further the discussion.
Private property.
It's their property.
Right, so they could if they wanted to, though, is my question, I
They
guess.
absolutely can.
Okay.
Well, the town has no authority to do that.
Further questions? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the question, ma'am.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Bowman?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McClure. We will make a determination one way or the other within the next 30 days, or after 30 days. Next item on the in the action section is public hearing, special use permit, 293 and 295 Cary Street. Tammy Clary.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The applicant is seeking approval to modify their site plan and install various props and a total of 12 shipping containers. These will be utilized as props and also for storage. The first prop is a pole barn type structure. It's approximately 50 feet by 30 feet, and it features a flat roof prop with a deck underneath. The second structure is going to be a future modular classroom. It's approximately 50 feet by 30 feet. The third prop is a pitched roof prop, approximately 30 feet by 30 feet. The fourth prop is an RIT Mayday prop, which is constructed from a 50-foot by 8-foot shipping container. The fifth prop, which is actually number 6 on the diagram, this prop is a 2-story stacked VES prop. This is constructed out of 2 stacked shipping containers. The sixth prop, which is number 7 on your diagram, it is the main burn building. It will incorporate at most 6 shipping containers, which would be stacked. There will also be 3 50 by 8 shipping containers, which will be utilized for storage. This would be number 8 and number 10 on your diagram, and then a vehicle rescue extraction area. Fencing will be installed that will match what is currently on the property, and it will feature 2 gates for fire truck access. Additionally, the police department is proposing a mobile modular shoot house. This is located on approximately 3,000 square feet of a concrete pad. It is unknown how long the shipping containers have been present on the property. These would be located at 1802A South Church Street. However, approval of this special use permit would bring that property into compliance. Town staff do support this application as it would provide a safe training space on the edge of town limits, mostly screened from view, with the suggestion that structures and colors utilized are coherent. The positives is this application does bring the property into compliance as an existing shipping containers are located on the property at 1802A South Church Street. The negatives, it is not a by right use and does require a special use permit. The Planning Commission did favorably recommend this application to Town Council at the Thursday, October 12th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Clary by members of council? Thank you, Terry. Tammy, is the applicant present, represented, or Mr. Smith? Do you have any comment you want to make, or any, or Chief? Come forward, state your name and who you represent, please.
Jason Stallings, I'm Assistant Chief, Smithfield Fire Department, been there for 35 years, so been around for a little bit. The fire department is actively trying to work with the town to move our training site to the public works yard. We've been looking for several years now for an off-site location from the fire station, knowing that where we are is bound by some constraints with size. And after talking with the town public works department, the town offices and stuff like that, this seems to be the best option for everybody involved. We understand there's some questions and stuff like that, and we'll be more than happy to answer whatever we can answer, but it just seems to be the best use of the property long term.
Thank you, Chief. Hold on a second. Oh, any questions of Chief Stallings? I have one.
Yes, sir.
The volume of smoke, and I have seen the training that goes on there when y'all have been conducting it on Saturday mornings, and I appreciate all the volunteers and the hard work that y'all do and everything, but tell me a little bit about how the smoke is generated and what volume.
So we have, yes, sir. One, we use all Class A material, so it's pallets or clean wood and straw. There are no flammable liquids used, no illegal type. We have to abide by Virginia Department of Fire Program 1403 standards when we burn and do live burns, which is a fairly strict guideline that we have to follow. The bulk of the smoke that we end up generating nowadays, we actually have modified the containers to get some longevity out of them, where we use wood stoves on the exterior that we plump into the building to create the smoke. A combination of that, some theatrical smoke that we use, and we also, and again, we do have a couple of containers that we actually do Class A fires in for simulation, but it's nothing illegal. It's nothing bad stuff. It's stuff that the state allows us to use for doing acquired structure burns that we had got in a house or a burn building otherwise.
The reason I ask is I live, just around the corner.
Yes, sir.
And I've never seen any smoke, and the smoke that I saw, and I've seen the wood stoves or whatever, I just want to make sure that I didn't miss something while I was watching there, because it didn't seem like a overly significant, I mean,
We try to control it the best we can. Obviously, we want to, and we use the shipping containers primarily because of cost associated with them.
Sure.
We've been able to get those relatively cheap, and this is something that the fire company is doing on its own. This isn't a large funded item, and we've been able to buy a shipping container at a relatively reasonable price, modify it to do what we need to do, and at the end of its life expectancy, we you recycle it or whatever, and you'll get another one.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions as follow-up to mine? Thank you, Chief. Open the public hearing. The first person is Timothy, and I cannot read the last name, W-E-N?
W-E-N-K, yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
I apologize for my bad hand.
No, mine's worse, believe me.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, or good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. My name is Tim Wink. I'm the owner of 300 Cary Street, so immediately adjacent to and across the road from the proposed location. So I have bought, rented, installed, and used shipping containers for a variety of purposes throughout the United States and the United States territories. I see and appreciate the utility they afford, but their use needs to comply with zoning requirements in both form and function. So as I've looked at the application and reviewed it, there are a few things that have stood out that indicate that these do not necessarily comply with the current definitions and zoning requirements from the town of Smithfield. And the first issue that I really have is how these are called accessory structures. An accessory structure is something that's subordinate to a primary structure that is, in its use is incidental to the primary structure. As they just mentioned, this is the public works yard. The primary structure there is to support public works and to do, for the town of Smithfield's public works. With that in mind, I'm not sure how the fire department or when the police go to use the shoot house, how those exactly align with the public works, and that the use of those structures is incidental to the public works department. Then certainly too, I'm not familiar with all shipping containers, but the ones I've used have either been 8 foot, the exterior dimensions have been 8 feet 6 inches or 9 feet 6 inches. When you stack those up, that certainly exceeds the requirement of the town's limitation on accessory structures of 16 feet. So perhaps these structures are different, and I'm not saying they're not, but as you look at the application, they provide 2 dimensions of a 3-dimensional structure. So there's not enough information, I think, to really tell if those dimensions are actually appropriate, whether that's an internal dimension, the 8 feet, or if that's a lateral. And then in addition to that, the location of the structure is on the property. So as you look at the town ordinance, it says that accessory structures should not be in the front yard, essentially. Not knowing exactly what the front yard of this property is, that's really concerning, because what I look out from my house and I see is what I would consider the front yard, so where the street access is to the property. And admittedly, it's out of the view for most people in the town, but it's not out of the view for me. And so that's what I have to deal with. And now, I recognize that the intent of this is to vote on or determine if we're going to allow these structures to serve as these accessory structures on the property. However, you cannot ignore the intent. Without the intent of what these are going to be used for, there would be no reason to put them there. And so I feel like it's almost disingenuous to suggest that these are going to be here, they're accessory structures, and that's what we're voting on. What we're voting on is, or what you're voting on, excuse me, is the ability to put these out there and to really use the property for something that's different. Excuse me. So you brought up one thing there. I'm an environmental engineer. I've worked as an environmental engineer, as a professional engineer for the last 20 plus years. In my profession, my specialty is cleaning up contaminated sites. A lot of the sites I clean up happen to be areas that have been used for fire training facilities, and they also have been used for small arm drainages, which I understand the shoot house is slightly different, but if you read the application, it does indicate that live fire would take place. At least that's what I've seen. Excuse me. So what we have with this is you have smoke, which can exacerbate, whether it's small or not, smoke can exacerbate health conditions. It can impact the ability to enjoy a property or to be outside, and it can intrude into my house if the wind shifts right, or the wrong way, I guess, in that condition. It doesn't sound like accelerants are used, but pallets, if they're used for fire. So pallets typically are either heat treated, which these may be, or they're treated, but the USDA requires them to be treated for pests. So one of the common pesticides used is methylene bromide. And when you burn that, it becomes a poisonous gas. So not sure what they're using, but that's certainly a concern because, again, in my profession, I deal with air emissions, which is this, I deal with dust. The particulate matter generated from smoke certainly can cause respiratory and exacerbate other health issues. Then associated with the training activities, there's noise and light pollution. I mean, if you look at this volunteer fire department's website, they show training activities at night, during the day, all sorts of stuff. That's great. I'm glad they do it. I appreciate the efforts you guys have to keep the town safe, to keep everything moving as it should. However, I mean, you are doing this in a new location where you are impacting the surrounding community with this. And so where the activities currently take place is the commercial area where you do not necessarily have all these issues or the impact.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much. And then also environmental contamination. These activities can lead to environmental contamination, whether it's if you're not using them now, but if fuel sources or accelerant sources are used, or your fuel for the fire changes in the future, those can cause issues. Similarly, phones used to put out fires cause all sorts of issues. That's one of the biggest environmental topics now is PFAS. That spends a lot of my time. So I live right nearby. I could have in the property there, the soil, the groundwater, the air, all of that can be impacted by these activities. So, between the environmental concerns, the unclear zoning aspects of this, and also the health impacts to me, my neighbors, living down the road from me that could be exposed to this smoke. I do ask that this be tabled or voted no, as this is further.
Your time has expired.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you. Brian Lally.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Brian Lally, 226 South Church Street. I was going to yield my 5 minutes to my son to continue his discussion related to the burn pits and the use of this property, but I think he said it all and said it very eloquently, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Close the public hearing. Matters before the council for discussion and action. Or council, should I say.
Mr. Mayor, I will add from Planning Commission that there was no conversation for or against this in a public hearing setting. So the recommendation to planning from the Planning Commission for a positive recommendation to Town Council did not have any consideration for 300 Cary Street or other neighbors that spoke against that. So I just want to make that clear that when the recommendation did come to this board, there was no consideration. The thought process was a much needed improvement for the fire department getting out of the location they are now, where they're not allowed to have these shipping containers and putting on a property where they could do training, and that was a mutual benefit for the town and its residents and the county as well. That was a reason for the consideration, but once again, there was no dissent or consent from the public.
All right. Further comment? Mr. Smith?
I understand the concern from the citizen. I've dealt with construction all my life, and we're not allowed to burn anything on the property unless it's in a burn barrel. That stopped many years ago, and it was because of typical runoff from ashes that might have been treated lumber or paint or what have you. So that ended that process a long time ago. So I do understand the concerns from the citizen. The waterway is right there. When it rains, it goes somewhere. It goes in the ground or it gets run off. So I think we need to study this a little further to make sure we're doing the right thing when we have these. And I know they're trying to do the right thing, burn the right thing, but I think it needs to be discussed a little further as to what may happen down the road with continued burns and practicing at the facility.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Further comment?
Yes.
Ms. Butler.
Based on the observation from the citizen, I'd like to hear some comments from Chief Stallings.
Chief? You've heard the concerns. Can you give us some mitigation?
Well, yeah, I'll try my best. So again, we're using the Class A materials that we're allowed by the state to burn in live fire training, which is wood and straw. As far as where pallets come from, I don't know. In the past, we've managed to get them free, but, most like the little hardware store or whatever wants to get rid of them. As far as firefighting foam and stuff, the Smithfield Fire Department won't be using foam on site. Matter of fact, the bulk of the foam that we actually use now is Class A foam, and our other foam, our AFFF foam that we actually have the ability to use is environmentally friendly per the manufacturer. I understand the concerns. I'm a career fireman too, so I get that. The structures, when we drew or worked with staff to work up the special use permit, the size of the containers, they're 40 or 50 feet long and 8 foot wide, 8 foot tall. So I'm not an engineer. I'm not trying to nitpick things. That's what size they're, square in a long rectangle shape. We do train weekends and night times because that's we're a volunteer agency. That's just when we work. We try not to be disrespectful to the community that we're in. We know that people have to work, people have to do things, that kind of stuff. The site is one that we feel has the least impact on the community around us for aggravation. I understand the gentleman lives across the street. I've known the house has been there for, I don't know, Chris, 20 years, 15 years, something like that. We try our best to be good stewards of the community, and we're just trying to do the best. If the site doesn't work out, that's what it is. The only thing we would ask at that point is maybe a little bit of help finding a suitable site to use at that point. Like I said, we looked at the Pinewood neighborhood came up when they first started clearing that out, and that's prime real estate. So the last thing anybody wants to do is put a volunteer fire department training center there when you can sell it and do something else. So this just seemed to be a good use of a piece of land that can't do anything else with it, in all honesty, due to what it used to be. Any other questions that I can answer for you?
What about the front yard, backyard comment? I mean, as far as placement of the containers?
The primary structure or burn building, or whatever you want to call it, would be towards the back part of the property. The facilities up front are our roof props, and I believe Ms. Clary was a Mayday and Rip prop.
Tammy can probably answer that better.
She knows legal verbiage. I don't.
So if you look at the diagram, the 50-foot setback, the front yard setback is labeled on that illustration. The front yard actually extends from 293 Cary Street, which is the main office building, which is right up front. So the front yard setback is located right behind that access driveway that runs parallel to Cary Street. And so it is behind that front yard setback, so there are no proposed structures that are located in the front yard.
Thank you.
Further comment? Well, I've got a couple, and all due respect to my friend and colleague. This location, and the chief didn't go far enough, but bottom line is it used to be a sewage treatment facility, lagoon, all sorts of any type of, if you can talk about toxic and potential for runoff and things like that. So that's what it used to be. Closed the sewage treatment facility down a number of years ago. Again, I have seen this training facility in operation that they have currently set up fronting our entrance corridor at South Church Street. And, you know, when we make decisions, I know we don't want to upset or in any way burden anyone, but at the same time, at times, it has to be a decision that's made for the collective and common good. And I believe that I don't think that there's another place in the town of Smithfield or that's available to them that would serve their purpose any better than this location. You've got Public Works there, I mean, it's a municipal maintenance facility that we've got some extra land there, and I think this would be a suitable location for it. These guys are trying to do the best they can what they've got to work with, and I applaud them for their innovation in coming up with this type of idea to move those shipping containers off of South Church Street, and I support the application. But again, any further comment? Matters before the council for action. Matters before the council for action.
Move that we approve the special use permit for the accessory structures, 293 and 295 Cary Street.
Motion made by Ms. Roundtree. Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
Second by Mr. Pack. Further discussion? Call the question.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Nay.
Mayor Bowman?
Yes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public hearing, amendment and revision of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area district map and zoning ordinance. Ms. Clary, busy tonight.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The existing Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area district map, this was part of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area ordinance, which was adopted in September of 1990, and then amended when it was readopted by Town Council on October 3rd of 2000. It does need to be updated and then incorporated into the zoning ordinance. The current map does not illustrate the boundary line adjustment that incorporated approximately 5.3 acres of land. This was the remaining portions of the parcels at the end of Glen Eagles in Cypress Creek, and the annexation of approximately 184 acres of land in the eastern portion of the town between Battery Park Road and Jones Creek, which was the Mallory Scott Farm area. It also includes the 3 intensely developed areas, the IDAs, that Planning Commission previously identified. We have provided a revised CBPA map. Again, this is just making sure that the map aligns with the town's boundaries. Thank you.
Questions, Ms. Clary, by members of council? Thank you, Tammy. This is a public hearing. I don't have anyone signed up for that. Does anyone wish to be heard on this matter? Yes, Ms. Mulhern? Please state your name for the record, please.
206 Washington Street,
Thank you, ma'am.
Smithfield. I think it also affects some of the properties on Mason Street, maybe one of the properties you're currently selling at the town. And since we just approved that whole fire thing, is that in the RPA? At the new map, it looks like it is. And so I'll just pass that question on, and that's all.
Thank you,
That's
ma'am.
all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I can comment to that.
Yes, please, Mr. Pack, go ahead.
Yeah. The property, Ms. Mulhern, is not in the RPA. It is removed from it. We're not allowed to build in the RPA. We couldn't build, you couldn't build, nobody can build in the RPA other than in the IDAs. The map, which we looked at Planning Commission, simply brings out the new border of the town of Smithfield. There's no changes to property. There's no changes to the actual RPA, other than in the section of town which was annexed, or it wasn't annexed, it was a boundary line adjusted a couple of years ago. That is really the only change that we have in this.
Oh, okay, thanks. The pictures look different. That's why I asked the question.
Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it. Further comment? Or, I'm sorry, the public hearing is now closed. Matters before the council.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend we approve as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Pack, second by Ms. Roundtree. Further discussion? Call the question, please, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Vice Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Mayor Bowman?
Yes, ma'am. The next is approval of the summary minutes from the Town Council's October 4th meeting. Mr. Riddick.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and members of council, I recommend approval as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Riddick.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Pack to approve. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Call the question, please, ma'am.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Vice Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Mayor Bowman?
Yes. That's all I have under the action section. New business, authorization to purchase the following properties along Great Spring Road: 204 Great Spring, 206 Great Spring, 208 Great Spring, 210 Great Spring Road. Mr. Stallings.
Yes, sir. As council is aware, we are in the process of administering a brick grant that we received through FEMA and through VDEM to acquire those parcels that routinely flood along Great Springs Road. We have signed purchase agreements with 204, 206, 208, and 210 Great Springs Road. So all 4 of those are ready to move forward. The final one of 600 Quail Street, we're meeting with them tomorrow to try to finalize that. They're up in the air about what they want to do with their parcel, but the other 4 have signed and are ready to move forward. So this would authorize the attorney and I to finalize that paperwork and keep that grant moving.
Thank you, Mr. Stallings. Mr. Riddick?
Yes,
Comment, please?
We've already done the title work on this, and so we think we can move pretty quickly. That's why we put this on as a new business. We're ready to go, and the property owners are ready to go. If you are so inclined, we need a motion to authorize the purchase of 204, 206, 208, and 210 Great Spring Road, and authorization to accept the deeds. If we could get that motion, then we can proceed, and we would not need to wait until the December meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Y'all quick on that one. Motion by Mr. Pack, second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion?
I do have a
Yes,
discussion.
Ms. Butler, please. Vice Mayor?
Once we agree on this and we move forward with the sale of the properties, how much time frame do they have to purchase their new properties?
That's something we can work out, because once we've acquired the property, then it's just a matter of the time it takes us to get everything in line to demo. We'll work with everybody to make sure that they have the time that they need.
Okay.
Any further comment?
My question,
Yes, Ms.
Michael,
Roundtree?
has to do with the reclamation of that property. I mean, I'm all for this, and goodness knows it's heart-wrenching to hear from the citizens that experienced the flooding, and again, am a proponent of this grant and the use of funds. What do we have to do to put the property back so that it's not a, hazard?
We will demo the homes, grade and seed, and that'll be it. So it'll return it back to grass. I mean, it'll be a place that we have to cut because we own it, but it'll be demoed, graded, and seeded.
And the only thing I would recommend is that you adopt a restrictive covenant that precludes the property from ever being used for residential purposes,
Yes.
because they're lawfully buildable lots. That's why we're in the problem, we have the problem we have now. They're not in a flood zone, and so if you don't do something to restrict it, this could happen again if things transpired years from now that nobody remembers anything about it.
Right.
Question on that. That would require a public hearing as well, would it, or would it not, if we adopted that?
No.
Okay.
Renee, in relationship to the question that you just asked, how would we demolish the property? I will tell you that there was a house at one time on Quail Street that was demolished in a flood. And I don't really know all the particulars about it, but the county ended up purchasing that house, and now it's just green space.
And Matt, Michael, you said that we are going to, grade and seed and have to cut the grass here. Can we bring this back to naturally forested land, allow it to go back to woods? It's better for the environment and it's better for flood protection when it goes through, and then we don't have to cut it either.
That's true.
That's definitely something we can explore. Yes, sir.
I mean, that way
would
we,
be a win-win for everybody. that
Right.
We don't have to maintain.
yeah, we don't maintain it, and it shouldn't, I'm looking at the neighborhood, it shouldn't affect anybody negatively around it that I can see, that you can think of. But I'd also like to amend my motion to put a restrictive covenants on it at Mr. Rick's suggestion. Or
We're not ready to do that yet. We just. that's-
Purchase first?
Yeah, purchase
And
first.
then put a restrictive, okay.
Correct.
I mean, we talked about that, and that's what needs to happen on this
Yes, sir.
property. Okay.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Further questions, further comments? Call the question, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Mrs. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mayor Bowman?
Yes. The next item on the agenda is item B, appoint committee to replace 2 seats on town council. As everyone, I think now is aware, we've had a resignation from town council, and also, depending upon what Ms. Roundtree decides as far as being sworn in, will definitely be departing here by the February meeting. So we need to replace, pursuant to law, 2 seats on council. Mr. Riddick, did you want to comment on anything at this point? Good to
No,
go?
The only thing Mr. Packett inquired about is the process for permanently replacing the vacant seats. And the statute changed a couple of years ago and now provides for a special election. I've called Mr. Stallings and I looked at the statutes, and they're very cryptic, and so I have a phone call into the Attorney General, and I haven't been able to talk to the AG, the Assistant AG that deals with local government and elections. But I would suspect it would probably be a special election in November of next year, so the person appointed would serve a year.
Both.
Yes, both persons. And then they would be, the election would be to fill their unexpired terms.
Right,
But-
so,
That's
yeah.
right.
So Ms. Roundtree's unexpired term would be for 1 year. The individual that resigned, he has 2 years, would have 2 years then remaining, because he and I were elected at the same time. So his unexpired term after the special election would be for 2 years.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to appoint 2 members of council. I'm going to appoint Vice Mayor Butler and Mr. Pack to vet the applications that come in through the talent bank. I think we need, if Mr. Fileski can help me out a little bit, making sure this gets in, what we'd like to do is encourage anyone that wishes to serve on council to submit their information through the talent bank. The talent bank forms now are available online. And, you know, within 2 weeks, I think if we get this out, or we need a little bit longer, I'm going to leave that up to the committee members, but I would say no more than 3 weeks to get your application in if you decide that you want to be considered. Now, that being said, after the vetting is done by the committee that I've appointed, that does not preclude any member of council whatsoever from making a nomination to the council. So this is simply a first step opportunity to look at who you've got, make a recommendation to council, versus us just picking someone out of the air. If you have the talent bank, you can see what you've got there, what their special attributes are, and I trust that Vice Mayor Butler and Mr. Peck, both being seasoned members, can at least work with that. And again, after they come back and council is not satisfied with their recommendation, then it'll be up to the floor to nominate. So that's where we're going to move, and that's how we're going to proceed on this matter, unless anyone has any comments, questions, objections.
Mayor, but may I have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So after the nominations are made, then as a body, do we vote on to ratify those?
Yes, you do.
Suggestions?
Motion, second, and ratify, correct. It has to be approved. Mr. Riddick, correct me if I'm wrong, but the bottom line is, it's a council action. I went through it, I know it. I mean, I did back in 2017, so.
And expecting that the recommendations will be made expeditiously,
We would hope, because.
would I be still able to vote on that?
You would. You're still a member of council.
Yeah.
Unless you decide to recuse yourself.
Okay.
And that, I don't get into that. That's, unless it's a lawful conflict, I learned a long time ago at the other place that I worked, as far as conflicts are concerned, the conflict is up to the person to declare and up to the person to take care of one way or the other, as far as obtaining guidance from, in this situation, it would be the local Commonwealth's attorney. But anyway, we're not there on anything like that right now. But that's what we'll do, and that's how we will move along on that. Next item is item C, resolution to establish the Personal Property Tax Relief Act percentage. Mr. Stallings?
Yes, sir. In front of everybody this evening, as well as digitally, you should have received a resolution that will establish the personal property tax relief rate for this year's personal property tax bills. Based off the calculations, that percentage should be set 38%, and that's based off the amount of money we receive from the state, and then you do a calculation based off the values of personal property in the town. And so 38% exhausts all of our personal property tax relief funds, and so that should be the rate for the year.
Questions of Mr. Stallings? I think we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the resolution to establish the tax relief percentage for personal property taxes as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Pack. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Ms. Roundtree. Further discussion? Call the question, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Mrs. Roundtree?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Bowman?
Yes. Next item is old business. Do we have any old business to take care of? There being none, next item is adjournment. Meeting adjourned. Thank y'all very much.